So thanks for everybody coming. By all means, just let me know. Chat or get involved if you want us to slow down or you've got any technical difficulties. These things do happen. But the idea of this user group is around practical lessons and tips and tools to help accelerate productivity and engagement with a remote team. So it's anybody who's really leading a team at this time or is responsible for helping with continuous improvement, because these two notions of engagement, lots of people talk about, but we also really want to emphasize productivity because that's what a lot of business managers are thinking about at this time, myself included. So who we've got here today, we've got Guy. So Guy's the Chief Technology Officer at Crimson. Do you want to just say, give us a bit of a hello, Guy, and any more of an introduction to yourself?
Hello, hi. Yes, like Dan said, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Crimson Education, and I guess like pretty much everyone in New Zealand, we've had to switch to working remotely. I guess for us, one key difference is that being a global company, we have to have a handle on a lot of this anyway. And I personally have in the past managed teams that have been sort of completely distributed and managed teams that I've been on the other side of the world from and that sort of stuff. So I've learned a few things the hard way thus far.
Yeah. One example of Guy was living in the UK while managing the New Zealand developer team, you know, so kidding with time zones, aren't you, Guy? And is Shan here yet? If not, I'll give Shan a lovely introduction. Shan Rayner is a very smart and wonderful lady. So she used to be the CEO at Rightway and now has started up an HR company, which is now owned by AdviceFirst. So she's a managing partner there and heads up all of the business advisory. So she coaches all sorts of businesses on how to be kind of more productive and particularly a total expert in HR. So really useful to have them. And we've got Meg here. Do you want to give a little hello?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Meg Dismer, and I sit on the account executive team at Salesforce in Auckland and have the pleasure of working exclusively with the nonprofit community. So for those who I don't work with, lovely to meet you all, and thanks for joining in today. And so really just going to share some of the fun stuff about engaging your team. So really looking at how Salesforce has mobilized and adapted and evolved all 50,000 of us as employees, taking some of that modeling and seeing how we can apply that in an actionable way in a lot of nonprofits in New Zealand, just to make sure that employees are still feeling engaged despite the current environment. So thanks so much.
Awesome. So, and I'm Daniel House. I'm the team lead at Gravity Lab. We likewise have been a pretty easy transition into remote working because we're already running a team from a distance. Most of our team are Auckland based, but we've got a lot of good practices in place, and we've been noticing quite a lot of different people who are talking about being struggling here, and we found it easy. So wanted to kind of share what we could. We're just here to help. So around just emailing Shan the correct link. 1 second, bear with me everybody as I just resend out the link to her. So around the agenda, so we're going to take questions. I'll explain that again one more time. And then the agenda is going to go through talk about tips for productivity, how to run remote teams and get visibility across sections, collaboration and communication, top tips and tools largely. And then ways of holding engagement, and then we'll open things up for the panel. And if you stick around to the end, we've got some online games that you can play, which are quite fun with groups of people. So just a reminder for asking any questions, you can go to slido.com, and in the box on the left-hand side, you type in user group, and that will take you into a portal where you can see all of the questions being answered, upvote them, or ask any questions of yourself, which we will go and have a look through towards the end. I'll just give you 30 seconds or so to just go to slido.com and type in user group, and we'll see how you're getting on. Okay, so one of the big things for us is we had remote working and employment policies while we went into lockdown a little bit before the level 4 announcement, we wanted to really condense everything into easy to remember principles. So these are the principles that we're using in our team. You don't need to use these principles, but I was told it'd be nice to take you through them. It's just basically an acronym of HOPE. The first one starts with help if you can. So it's just really, really mindful to other people are hurting more than yourselves. Other organizations need struggle. And if you can help anybody, this is a great time to help them out. If you don't feel like there's anything you can do to help them out, then just follow the government's advice of self-isolating and encourage other people to self-isolate so we can beat this disease. O is for online engagement. So it's really important that we keep socially close while physically apart. So what are the other ways so we can still run a fun team with a good culture while we're not all in the same office? P is productivity. We've got a business to run. We need to keep everything going well. And if we don't do that, then we won't be in a very good health and a good state. The more productive we can be, the more we have time for helping and engagement as well. So making sure we're smart around that. And then the last point to really drive home is extra communication. So we're not in earshot, we're not overhearing each other, we're not in the same room. So putting extra effort into communicating. The other way we look at this is being purposefully unproductive. So while productivity is a big drive, it's really important to have time to be unproductive, to go for a walk, to just talk with each other, have some more talk, do stupid things. So really keeping those two in tension of being productive, great, but also be unproductive in a healthy way. Because in a normal day, you are unproductive. You do talk while you're making a cup of tea, etc. So to get straight into it, to talk through productivity, I want to talk about Agile. So Agile is a methodology that's used in a lot of tech businesses and a lot of new businesses around managing projects. But some of the fundamental principles of Agile are still really useful to all organizations, even if you're not running projects. And these principles are really apt when we talk about remote working. So a number of key benefits to Agile, but to give you a quick understanding of the benefits, it's team-driven. So Agile is going, team, how do you want to work? Empowering the team to work in ways that they know will work rather than a total top-down approach. It's about encouraging transparency. And with that accountability, so people can see what's happening. It's outcomes focused, so you make clear outcomes, and then you can celebrate as you complete those outcomes. And if you're struggling with outcomes, you can commiserate with someone. Those outcomes are all time boxed. So rather than saying we're going to get this done in the next 3 months, we're going to get this done in the next 3 days. What can we do next week that makes a difference? What are our strategic goals? What do we need to get done? So that we can make sure that we're prioritizing well and that everything, like I said, is outcome focused. And the last and very important principle of Agile is continually improving. So always thinking, could we do that better? What's a better way of doing? So the key things here is transparent outcomes, which are time boxed, and then everything's team driven and it's continually improving. So it requires a lot of trust in the team to get them on board. And it's a really good engagement tool focused on productivity. So how does it roughly work? I'm just going to talk about the sprints component and I'm going to try and de-jargonize it. So the idea of Agile is as a sprint. So there's a time-boxed length of time. In our team, because we go across multiple projects, we might have 2-week sprints with a client, but we use 1-week sprints internally. So if in doubt, I recommend using 1-week sprints. What this means is your time box could be from Monday to Friday. So within that week, what are your goals for the week? And you've got a set period of time. You start off with planning. So what you have in the background is a prioritized list of goals or tasks. In the Agile world, it's called a backlog. You have a list of tasks you want to do, and the manager on the team will help you prioritize those tasks into an order. And then each week, before the week starts, you do a planning exercise and you go, which goals am I going to aim for next week? Then once you're in the week, you have a stand-up. So another way of saying this was traditional when people would literally stand up at the desks. Think of it as a 10-minute check-in, and it should only be around 10 minutes. So this is where people can check in and go, how's your work going? You're making progress since yesterday? Is there anything blocking you or slowing you down? Do you think you're on track to get everything done? I recommend doing this not with a whole company team, but if you could do this with smaller teams, say teams of under 10, otherwise having a check-in of everybody. If it's taking longer than 10 minutes, you're probably doing it wrong. But given online, if they want to have a chat and some engagement, that's okay. So first thing here is around sprint planning. So making sure we prioritize a list and we book and what we're going to do each week. And the second one is make sure you catch up every day about how you're going to that plan. Then what you do at the end of the week is you have a sprint review. So this is looking at the sprint review and going, how well did that sprint go? And how well did you make progress? And remember, not everything's going to get finished in a sprint or in 1 week. That's okay. You can just replan, and some things take longer, something gets stored. You can replan and try and make better guesses for the next week. One of the top tips here is to make sure that you do not overload how much you're going to get done. When you're starting, you start with less things in your sprint, so you can make sure you get them done and you get serious wins. And every now and then, I'd recommend you start with once every week, then every 2 weeks, and every month, is you do a retrospective. So what this really is a process review. So you're looking through and going, how are sprints working? Do people understand them and buy into them? How well is sprint planning going? How well are those daily check-ins going? And how are the end of sprint reviews going? So you're looking to continually improve your process, empowering your team to give feedback, and just rapidly adjusting as you go. So I'm going to give a couple of practical examples, box covering it up at the moment. So I wanted to take something that's a little bit more project-based. So imagine an accounting policy. You've got some time and you need to change your accounting policies, maybe change your payments terms. So in your sprint planning, you might talk about your task is to update the payment terms and our policies and maybe our terms of service in this time. You can talk about that each day, and you can talk about when people check in, say, look, I've written that section and I think I'm on track to finish it this week. I'm all good. Nothing's holding them up. Or I quickly need help. And then you can schedule help for after. At the end of the sprint, you could get in there and say, I completed those accounting policies. It's all done. That's really good. Likewise, we think you can use Agile Awesome for BAU tasks to keep everybody engaged. So in this example, for an accounts receivable clerk, they don't need to put in all of their tasks, but they might put on some goals for the week. I'm going to do those invoice reminders. I'm going to follow up on these 2 big clients. And those are your 3 goals. And if you can get them done at the end of the week, we can celebrate with you. If you can't get hold of those clients, then we can commiserate with you. But that transparency is there, and that naturally leads to accountability. So what we're advocating is both projects and non-project teams go there. As we went into lockdown, we moved our non-project team all into our stand-ups as well, so that everybody can have a chance to connect each day. We also do our stand-ups first thing in the morning. So that's like we start our day with our stand-up at 8:30. That makes sure everybody gets out of the bed, and we've got a reason to have a strict start time. You can decide what makes sense to your team. We negotiated that with the team, and the team decided what time worked best for them. It wasn't top-down management. So some top tips for implementing Agile. Really, really important notion is sizing. So making sure that if you're doing a plan, you're not putting too many big tasks in there. If you're putting in 2 tasks that are going to take you around 3 days, then it's not going to work. I recommend when you're starting out, maybe only putting in 2 days worth of work so that everybody can get to the end of the week and know that they've had a success and they've cleared their plate. Set people up for success, make this a positive experience, and go for small amounts of workload at the beginning, because people still are doing their job. And another way of doing it potentially is to go, what is the one thing you want to get finished this week? And you just track that. In line with this is not everybody's to-do list. So don't fill it up with lots of little tasks. Just keep those priorities in there, just visibility of the priorities, because people don't care about everybody's little tasks. Consistency is really important. So set in times for those daily stand-ups, make sure they happen. Make sure you do sprint reviews and retrospectives. They're an essential part of it for continually improving. Team buy-in, like with all Agile principles, at the core of it is a team driven. The team have to enjoy this. The team have to take ownership of it, give them a say. Speed, this is not designed to be a burden, but designed to improve productivity. So daily check-ins should be around 10 minutes. Sprint review should be able to be done in 15 minutes. Sprint planning could be 30 minutes. And then last tip there is make sure you identify blockers. So people are thinking about what's going to stop them achieving that goal. When you start off, you can start what's in this sprint, this week of the blockers. In the future, you could go into what are the things I'm going to do next week that might block me. Guy, you're a big fancy CTO. Is there anything else you would add to that or anything else you think needs further explanation?
That's a good question. I was just thinking that I guess one of the fundamental thoughts about Agile, I guess, in the long run is that it should lead itself to teams that are relatively self-organizing. So you have that one person whose job it is to kind of represent the stakeholders and give the rest of the team a view on priority, and then from there, really, all these other parts of the process or parts of the methodology really should lend themselves to the team becoming quite sort of autonomous and self-organizing. And I think if you look at this all, one of the other things is that it actually makes it possible to be quite asynchronous in terms of how we do our work. And that is actually a key thing, I guess, for remote working, is that you don't have the benefit of the level of sort of instant synchronous communication that you would have with people in an office. And so you need to adapt to allow people to be capable of working with less kind of input from everyone else at the same time. I think we also have to, like Daniel said, make ways to communicate more while we're isolated in our little bubbles, but creating a methodology which lets us function more asynchronously means that we don't lose anything by sort of changing the amount of synchronous communication we have.
Awesome. And Sian as well, if you're there, I know we did a little bit of Agile sprints with you. Any kind of feedback on how that process was? Because that was brand new to you.
Yeah, and I think it really works. I look at what you've just taken us through there, Daniel, and it's certainly what we implement within the business. Now, when I look at what we do, it's every day, as you say, getting every week, what is it we're trying to achieve, checking in on a daily basis, doing those reviews, how have we tracked, what do we need to pass over to the next week? And it's that continual process of review. So this certainly isn't just for the tech companies. It works for the strategy company, business advisory, HR. So definitely a good method. And it really helps us, exactly as you were saying, Guy, it keeps everybody engaged. It helps in terms of that communication, and it supports that whole process around productivity, as well as the, that whole engagement side too. So, good.
Thank you, guys. One last note I'll make on this is there are lots of books and organizations that Agile has become this really complicated thing, and people say you must do it these ways, and they'll have a different definition of these terms. It doesn't matter. Like Guy said, it's a self-organizing team. What works for your team is good. As long as you implement these principles of self-organizing teams, keeping it quick and keeping visibility, you're on the right track. So in line with that, another kind of important notion is around roles. And I'm going to keep this really simple, but I think there's kind of 3 key roles that you should think about in an Agile team. Who is the owner? So this could be a product owner or project owner, or in your case, it's probably just a manager or a team lead. And they're setting their job as a manager is to set the direction and to help prioritize those goals and tasks. That's a fundamental role of the manager, is to communicate what the priorities are and what's less priorities. So they help there. They hand that to the team that are going to self-organize and deliver the work. But in Agile, and we recommend that you assign one person as the dedicated Scrum Master. So that's their name. You can give them whatever name you like, but they're the person that is responsible to make sure you're following the cadences, sprint planning, daily stand-ups, reviews, and retros are all happening to make sure that this works. If you just leave it to nobody, it doesn't work. And I also think if a manager's running it, it doesn't have the same vibe as a self-organizing team. I do not believe the Scrum Masters should be the manager or team lead. There should be someone in the team that's voted in or is happy to do this work. So how do you manage that backlog or those lists of tasks? There's lots of different options for this. So a lot of tech companies will use something that's a little bit more complicated with Jira that's built around Agile sprints. But if you've heard of Trello and you use Trello, it does the job. If you're using Asana, we use Asana, so a lot of our clients would know about Asana. You can put things through a Kanban board, that's good. Salesforce has task management built in. It's not designed to be a project management tool. It does have AppExchange products, and most people on this call already have Salesforce. Or lastly, if you manage all your tasks in a spreadsheet on Google Sheet or a document, and that is working for you, then great. The tool is not the problem here. Making sure you follow some of these principles are. I wouldn't manage my team on Google Suite, but I can imagine during this time of change, it might not be the right time to introduce new tools. So on this whole call, we'll give you options, but we're not saying that you should introduce new tools. Use the tools your team are comfortable with, and you can adapt from there. A really great outcome would be starting simple, and your teams ask you to move on to something good, and you can do it as a result of their feedback. Happy to answer any questions around that, and do post any questions around productivity tools. These are particularly around task management. So that's what we wanted to talk about with productivity. So going into tools and tips for communication, collaboration and communication. So there's different areas. Instant messaging becomes really key, because when you're in a synchronous fashion, like Guy said it, and everybody's in the same office, you can just talk to somebody. You overhear conversations. There are lots of different tools for instant messaging. Emails have a play, but they're a bit slow sometimes. Phone calls and video meetings are better, but sometimes you just want to ask a question, let someone respond in their own time. By far the biggest contender in this place is Slack. It is what most tech companies use, and it's a brilliant instant messaging tool. When it got brought into Gravity Lab, Dave introduced it, and I said, I don't see why we need it over Google Hangouts. And then I tried it, and I get why we need it. It's just better. It's just very good at what it does. It's very fun. It's easy to use. It's really easy to create groups and disestablish groups. If you're a nonprofit, or if you're already online, you probably either have Microsoft products, so which you might get Microsoft Teams, or you're on the Google set of products and you might have Google Hangouts. If you've got those products, great. I don't think you necessarily need to change to a better instant messaging topic unless that's what people are demanding. Also note that Salesforce, since you're all Salesforce user, also has Chatter built in, where you can type messages on records. I think this is better for note-taking, keeping everything organized, but it does work for instant messaging as well. So if you've got Google Hangouts or Teams, or you want to use Salesforce, keep what you have. If you don't have those, or they're not working for you, give Slack a go. It's a really good tool. So video messaging, obviously we're using Zoom right now. If you've got Microsoft Teams or Hangouts, it's built in. If you get Slack, it's built in. Skype, what everybody used to use. If all your team have that and that's working for you, great, use it. Join.me is similar to Zoom, is another good one, and one of the more social ones for social networking. Or if you want to use this for non-work related things, House Party is a very easy to use app. Zoom is a little bit more corporate, and House Party is very casual. So I've got my wife's birthday on Thursday. We'll be all hanging out on House Parties and celebrate her birthday. Around collaboration and sharing documents, I'll make it clear right now that I think you should already be using online documents anyway. And if you're keeping everything offline on the server, that is a big problem. Backups are really important. Security is really important. Documents are auto-save. Nobody likes losing their progress, and version control are automatically done on any of these online tools. I hate it when I see version 1 of a doc, version 2 of a doc, and I end up with 2 version 3s of a doc because you're emailing back and forth. It's not the right way to do it. Nobody should be using that on a local server these days if they can avoid it. Around options, like I said, if you've got the Google Suite, use their tools. They've got documents and Google Sheets and slides. I'm using a Google Slides right now. If you've got the Office Suite, use that. That's great. If you don't have either of them, or you're looking for something new, Salesforce is making their product Quip available for a few months. Meg, do you know how many months they're making that available for?
Right now it's until September 30th.
Cool. So you've got kind of 6 months worth of usage out of Quip. And Quip is a really nifty tool, and it's better than those other two for a couple of reasons. It has inbuilt collaboration built into it, so you can have feeds and chat on it. And basically, rather than choosing, do I want a Word document or an Excel document or PowerPoint, you can put all three of them into the same one. So you can have an Excel spreadsheet in part of your Word document, a PowerPoint part of your work, but listed checkboxes. It's a really nifty tool. We do use this tool internally for collaborating with other organizations, and we use it really well. It's free, it's easy to sign up to. It's easier to use than the other two. After September 30th, there might be a cost associated, probably will be a cost associated to it. So I'm not doing a plug that you should use the Salesforce product, but at this time, I would recommend giving it a go if you're looking to use something. Engagement. So now I'm going to pass it over to Meg to talk through how to stay engaged while you're working these remote teams.
Thanks so much, Daniel. So like I said at the beginning, I get to talk a little bit about some more of the fun stuff. So I don't think we need to have a really large discussion on the importance of employee engagement during the current atmosphere. I think we can all agree that it's more important than ever to really ensure that we're providing opportunities for connection with our teams. So just wanted to highlight some of the things we've been doing at Salesforce and a few fun ideas of how you can keep your teams engaged. So Daniel, if you'll just head over to the next slide since you wanted to be in control of all of them today. So I think one key thing to really emphasize is that while we are currently in lockdown in New Zealand, that the goal is physical distancing and not social. So how can we, again, continue to facilitate opportunities for connection so that despite all of the noise, uncertainty, confusion, fear, anxiety, we're creating an opportunity for teams to come together, connect around values, a centralized mission and goal that we're all working towards, and also really to have fun and to have a little bit of distraction away from our current news cycles and updates that we're all obviously top of mind and kids at home. So one study from the New Zealand General Social Survey, which was done about 9 years ago, was that on an average day, 1 in 3 adult New Zealanders are feeling lonely to some degree and have reported that within the last 4 weeks. So we can definitely all, again, acknowledge what those increases look like in the current environment. So really, again, how can we reduce isolation and loneliness within the workplace and really bring people together, through online connectivity. So I have put together some fun ideas for teams. The next slide, Daniel. So virtual connection, ideas to engage remotely. So really our goal today was to make things super actionable because I think all of us have really full calendars, incredibly large workloads, and we're trying to move our teams remote from last week's updates. So wanted to provide you all with some ideas and then also links where you can get actual tools to put in place for your teams. So some things that we've been doing at Salesforce include meditation throughout the day. So Headspace, if you're not familiar, is a great digital tool for online meditation that's been pre-recorded, and they actually have one called Everybody Headspace, which allows your team to do a group meditation. So really focused on mindfulness and calming atmospheres to really help break up a busy workday. Doing team coffees in the morning or afternoons, stretches. So I actually am a certified yoga teacher, and at my last job, I had a back-end engineer tell me that after my stretch session, he would never do yoga again. So I'm not leading any of those for my team, but my manager is also a yoga instructor. So if you have somebody on your team that feels comfortable leading that, that's a great opportunity for connection and also just movement in your day, but also have put together, a website reference of 50 of the best free workouts, selfies of the day. So that's something that we've seen a few teams do, just sending a selfie. Maybe it's the real pants you've worn to work that day, or something else that you want to share with the team. Dog cam, I know Daniel, I've seen his new puppy at least once a day, but we've done lots of webinar hangouts where we make pet appearances, talent shows. Elisa from the Gravity Lab team was sharing that they've been doing an A to Z of me, which is that once a week, a team member actually presents an A to Z on themselves, just in a quick 15-minute presentation. So it could be that apple crumbles are my favorite food. I played basketball and I have 26 cousins, you know, going through the alphabet and getting, again, people to really build connectivity and interpersonal relationships in a way that they might not have otherwise done within their workplace. Fancy dress, I tried to find a costume, but I've been locked down unexpectedly in Queenstown, so did not have my costumes with me, but have included just some fun ideas really, again, about how you can bring some lightheartedness into team meetings. And then really around making it happen. So how can this, you know, be easily implemented for your teams? So I think one is appointing a weekly culture ambassador. So you definitely don't want engagement activities to feel like more of a burden for team members. Again, we all have so much going on. So really allowing one member of the team to take responsibility for that week to put time on the calendar for the team to do something fun all together online. And then switching that up from a week to week perspective. So again, nobody's really shouldering the burden of doing all the planning and coordinating. Keeping things informal and fun and optional. So again, this is a space to opt into, but not making it feel like it's something that's a requirement for team members, I think is also really important. Another one is really being inclusive. So crowdsource ideas. What does your individual team want to do? Maybe everyone's back-end engineer that hates yoga, and that's a terrible idea. So really seeing what's going to fit best for your team, and also being conscientious of timing. So, you know, maybe that 5 o'clock happy hour doesn't work and parents can't wait to get offline to really focus on their families. So a 5 o'clock event isn't going to be a good fit, or that 8 a.m. start doesn't work for other people because that's when school starts for the day. So just being thoughtful about how you're creating inclusive activities for the team. And then also, I think really from a top-down perspective, if you are a people leader, giving your team permission to really take the time away from their day-to-day work, even if it is 30 minutes a week, to get to participate and really connect and take a step back from the day-to-day of, you know, of the job and really get to participate fully in these engagement opportunities, because it definitely facilitates overall employee productivity, well-being, and also mental health. So really, yeah, that's the intention of these, is really to give back to your employees and really help facilitate that employee engagement and getting to bring more of yourself to work in our new environment.
That's awesome. Thanks, Meg. That's really useful. Yeah. Shan, I was going to ask if you had any kind of, you talk to so many businesses and particularly people leaders. Is there any other kind of cool ideas you've seen for developing virtual connection?
Yes, I think in terms of, I think all the ideas that you've just gone through there, Meg, were excellent. And I was thinking about this Friday, we have Friday drinks every Friday now, which is something we didn't even have when we were actually in the work office. But now we're finishing at 4:30 and getting together. And this week is a baby photo competition, so we're going through that. But in terms of what I would probably say, just in terms of more how we get people to connect, Daniel, I think it's going back a step almost in terms of making sure that we've got clear guidelines as to how we're going to support our teams at home and how we're going to do regular sort of connecting via Zoom or Teams or Slack. And I think it's almost setting up that sort of cadence of communication. So it might be that you're saying that every single week we're going to have a catch up on a Monday morning, 9:15, and it's going to be about the wider company. So it may just be the manager, CEO, team leader, just giving a bit of an update, but talking about what's going on in terms of the big picture. How is everyone progressing towards the vision? How are we moving with our higher goals, and what are the related successes? But it's also a good idea then to actually focus on celebrations like birthdays, anniversaries, and then moving down in that cadence again. I think it's about saying, right, we make sure that we're having one-on-ones with our direct reports, And that's as well as going in there and talking about the core KPIs and how we're tracking against those and what are the barriers and what support is needed. I think it's also about picking up on what's going on for you in general, what's happening. So making sure that we're making time for that connection. And the other thing that a lot of our clients are doing, and we're doing ourselves, are morning huddles, which ties in with what you were talking about with the Agile and what Guy was picking up on. So we talk about what are the priorities for the day, what are the learnings that we need to share, and where is support needed, and we use Trello to manage that. Now, the other thing I'd say is, well, around video get-togethers, and when you're doing that communication, it's really trying to stick with the meetings so that they are a routine, because when teams are working remotely or working from home, we kind of get to rely on these connections because it is part of the engagement side. It does give the team security about what's going on, and they feel like they're getting more support around that communication. And right now, exactly as Meg picked up on, people could be feeling the impacts of loneliness and disconnectedness. So the more we can communicate again, I think that would really help too.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Sharon. That's really useful. If you do have questions, just add them into the slido.com tool. Trudy, are you there? I'm not sure Trudy's in the meeting.
Sorry, let me just, I was just about to get dinner on for the children, which is quite appropriate. Yes. So I just walked away from that. Sorry, let me just get myself comfortable. Hi, everyone. So yeah, working from home as a parent, let's be honest, it's really, really, really hard. I mean, I'm used to working from home a lot, which is great. And it is a real fantastic thing when you've got the kids going to school and they can, walk to school by themselves and come home from school by themselves. But when you have them here 24/7 and you're still doing your full-time job, it is tough. So I've kind of found over this last week, I guess, that my role has become more like an AE, obviously, for Salesforce. For those who don't know me, hello. And also, I feel like I'm working for the zoo, constantly feeding the animals. And because no takeaways are open, you are constantly making sandwiches and cooking and, looking after everyone, which is fine. It's just challenging. And also making sure, you're the lone one going to the supermarket and making sure you get all the right stuff. So it's challenging, but I'm grateful that I have a role and I have a job, but it is challenging. So what I've been doing to, I guess, try and combat that is making sure that I'm not too hard on myself and making sure that I realize, yes, Rosanna, making sure that I realize that I'm not going to be able to get the bulk of work that I used to be able to get done now with the kids here, although with my kids being slightly older. I think if you go to the next slide, maybe. Did I update my photo? Yeah. So they're 9 and 6, right? So it's not like the toddlers running around. They understand when mummy's on a call or in a meeting. And Darren, my husband's home, of course, as well, but he's in insurance and it's the last day of the financial year today. So incredibly stressful, busy time for him as well. So I'm kind of just taking the kids side away from him so he can focus on his job at the moment. But yeah, it's just structuring in time, making sure that I am putting time in my calendar to walk away from the laptop. Because I don't know about you guys, but I found I am in back-to-back video meetings all the time and it's driving me insane. I've actually had to step back from some check-ins. So Meg and I both have our teams, we're part of the New Zealand wider team, but we also report through to Sydney. So I've stepped back from the daily or every second day New Zealand check-in because I've got my daily coffee meeting with my Sydney team. And, there's just so much information coming at you that I've just really had to make the choice to step back and just really pick and choose what I want to be a part of and what's going to bring value to my day and value to my customers, to be honest. Making sure that I have my priorities right. And device time is good, right? hopefully this lockdown's only going to be a few more weeks. So, and look, I've always been quite a liberal parent, right? You know, my kids know what swear words are, sorry, but I've got to be realistic. And I'm okay with them being on the iPad or on their computers. I'm not stressing too much about homeschooling. Every day I'm getting them to write some words in a journal so that they can reflect back on this time that we were in lockdown, and we can remember what it was like. My son's first journal entry was how sad he was that McDonald's was closing. So that but yeah, it's just, I don't know, being patient, being kind, being compassionate with one another within the bubble. And what else have I got here? Yeah, and just making sure you claim your own time as well as the working parent. You know, we kind of tag team with Darren, so I can go down to the park with the dog and just get some fresh air. Yeah, so it's a work in progress, but it's fun.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Trudy. I think one big thing is to remember, if you don't have kids or your kids are a lot older, be really nice to the parents at this time. There's two people at home and one of them can't work. They're looking after kids. So you should be, as people leaders, you should be checking in with each of your team members and asking them, how can you support them? Set them up for success. Make sure that you're not expecting too much for them, because they can't give what they used to be giving. It's just, it's the facts, you know? Trudy would love to give more. She's a great example, but you've got to set them up for success. Thank you for sharing that with us, Trudy. I think it's something that's really important to remember in engagement. And that means, practically, those engagement things, parents might not be able to show up to them. Parents might not be able to come to Friday drinks.
Totally.
You know? That's okay.
Yeah, that's the last thing I want to do, is when you've spent a whole day juggling children and videos, is to do drinks. Even though I love my team, I'm just like, I'm out, sorry.
Yeah,
I'll just have my own wine in the corner by myself.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Trudy. I'd probably ask that to Sian again. I know you're a mum and deal with lots of parents as well. Anything else we can better do to support parents during this difficult time?
Hey, yeah, I'm in one of those lucky but challenging situations as well, Trudy, listening to you. It's I have got I'm getting better treatment now working at home and having my family here, because I've got everybody bringing me in cups of coffee, bringing me in food. Kids are leaving me alone, but that's only because my husband cannot work at all. So we're noticing it from the other side in terms of the revenue that comes into the family. So it's a real balance, isn't it, and a real tricky one for everybody. But how else do I think about in terms of actually making it work for our team? Exactly as you've all picked up on, it's making sure that we have those regular video communications so that we've got those interactions. I think it's exactly as Trudy says, it's about managing expectations of everybody so that you're not just doing the calls all day long every day. But the video is absolutely essential, because it really helps you to sort of focusing on the nuances and the reactions and what your team are really thinking or feeling, because you can't always tell that over the phone. The other thing I'd say is try and know when to pick up the phone, or when video is going to be better. So for example, if you can sense that you've got a constructive feedback to give, or there's a problem with one of your team, get on the video so that you can see what's going on for them and how they're feeling at the moment, rather than just picking up the phone, because if you can't see at the moment, it does make things a little bit tricky. The other thing I'd say is, what I'm sort of noticing with clients is some people are being missed out of meetings. It's make sure that you invite all the stakeholders on board that need to be involved in things of meetings, so that everybody can contribute, being on an equal footing. Because yeah, that's causing a bit of conflict with teams at the moment. And/or it's knowing that you can, where possible, work around so that those that have got kids in the house that they need to be looking after, they can attend the crucial meetings where decisions are being made. The other thing I'd say in terms of how we support those that are actually in our teams working at home is understanding what level they're at. So particularly what we're finding is the juniors or the new people, they might be taking longer to deliver, but that's because they haven't got the support that they might have if they're in an office with their manager. I think when it comes to productivity, it's knowing where everybody is in real time so that you can actually connect in with your team, find out who's got capacity, but also think about who's feeling overloaded. Because if you can get in there and support them, because you might be thinking, oh, they've not got a lot of work on, but if they are trying to juggle it with everything else that's going on around them, again, it comes back to what you talked about around that compassion piece as well. And I think as leaders as well, we know, you want to be able to trust the people that you've got on your bus. There's a lot that people will say about, oh, how do you know if people are doing what they need to be doing? My view is that everybody knows what the goals that they're trying to work towards, and they know how they contribute towards the bigger picture, and you've set them up for success. Then they should be able to do what's required, and it's just trust them to be able to do it. And then I guess the other thing is make sure that the team really know how to set up their remote workspace, so that they are comfortable what they have to do in terms of their workforce management. And I know it's not always possible, but if you can get yourself in a room to work where you can shut that door, it does make it easier than working on the dining room table, because you're so much more accessible. And don't get me wrong, I've had clients that literally are working in their pantries or their cellars just to try and get some time where they can work alone. The other thing I say is make sure that your team are feeling that you understand what's going on for them around, have they got reliable internet? Is the computer working? Have they got access to the systems that they need to use? So that would be the other thing that I'd say as well, Daniel. Yeah.
That's really useful. To just recap like a couple of really key points from that. One is making sure they're set up for success. Like, I know we've got really nice kind of monitors and chairs and stuff at work. The office is empty. Everybody came in and grabbed them because they want to work well. People complaining about chairs, we said, go get your office chair. It's an expensive chair. It's rated for sitting down for 8 hours. A cheap office chair is not, or a dining room table, is not rated to sit down for 8 hours. That makes a big difference. And the other thing you mentioned that I think is really important to highlight, and I really want to stress this, is critical or constructive feedback is done over videos. We've all made this mistake of instant messaging or emailing people. It's not the right way to do it. You've got to feel someone out, and you've got to make sure it's done in a really respectful way if you want to get the results. It's very easy for someone to feel defensive over instant messaging, and miscommunications happen all the time. It's not worth the risk. And that's not just manager down. We've made that as a policy across the whole team. If they want to give anybody some feedback or anything that they think could be construed from anybody's perspective, then they need to make sure that they do it over video. So just a quick recap on what we've done so far. So there's a bunch of tools, so communication tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Hangouts, House Party, Salesforce Chatter, document tools. I will share these meeting slides so you can look things up. We'll talk about those tools for games and fun. Jackbox TV, Dave's going to show us right at the end. And you can use any meeting app that you need to use as long as you're getting the engagement. There's another tool I'm not going to talk about, but our friends at Rush, who are a big technology company, they had already worked with an advisor who specializes in like epidemic responses, and they come up with a diagnostic tool that can help you survey all of your staff and check in with them. That's planc.io. They made it free during this time. So once again, when you go through the slides, you can have a look at that. Really useful. But what I want to do is go through questions. If you do have questions, everybody go on to slido.com, enter in the tag user group, and then you can see the questions will show up on the screen here. And then if you upvote them, it'd be really useful you go to upvote them, so we make sure the important ones that get answered first. There's one highlight at the top here. So how do you keep tabs on how your team are doing personally without being able to get regular visual cues? I think that's a good one for you, Sian.
Yeah, I think that it comes back to exactly what I was saying. If the team know what the vision is for the business and where the company is heading, if they know how they contribute towards the achievement of the vision, they'll know what their 3 to 5 core things that need to be done. And as a manager, we need to make sure that we're connecting in with them so that their team know what they're doing, we're keeping a track in terms of how they're progressing, what the barriers are that are getting in the way, and then trust our team. We didn't bring them on to babysit for them in an office. So it's, what can we do to make sure that they've able to do everything that will enable them to keep working?
That's really useful. Thanks, Sian. Let's go through these. There's lots of questions. Let's make sure we go through them. And thanks for submitting them. Do you think you will implement more remote work within your teams after COVID-19? Say full-time or 2 days per week? What about you, Guy? What do you think about this one?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't think that I mean, I think working remotely, we've adapted to it quite well at Crimson. And we've always had a certain amount of flexibility around working from home. You know, if people are expecting a fridge to turn up, or if they've got some errand to do that's just going to take them a lot of driving around, you know, we've always had that kind of flexibility. But I think it depends a bit on the role. And for us with software developers, there's sort of two kinds of work. There's the head down in the zone, focusing kind of work, and that works really well from remote. That actually works better than in an office because there's no distractions. But there's another kind of work which is the sort of work where you want to be around a whiteboard and that sort of thing. And I think that the reality is that's always going to be better with everyone in the same room. There are a number of things. We have a small tech team in China as well, so there are a number of things where we've shifted to sort of doing them over Zoom by default anyway. But I would say on the whole, my preference would be to have people come into the office still, you know, as much as possible after this lockdown. I think we'll be better at remote work, but I prefer to have everyone in the same room if we can manage it.
Awesome, thank you, Guy. One thing I'll add to that is what I found from doing remote work over the years is if I've got something very specific to do, I'm more productive at home. If I've got something more creative and something that's a little bit more fluffy, I'm more likely to get distracted at home. So one thing that we're likely to implement after the lockdown and been asked is if you do have really focused work to get done and you just want to smash it out with no distractions, stay at home, get it done. If that's a better environment, if that's going to make you more productive and more happy, great. But it's probably not going to be our normal either. While you're talking there as well, Guy, I saw another question further down about how do you collaborate with your kind of global team? You know, you mentioned you've got one in China. I'm sure you've got them in lots of different countries. How many countries are you kind of, as the Crimson employees in?
I think like 18 countries and 24 different cities or something.
Okay.
So that's across the whole of Crimson. For me, with my team, we have Auckland and Shanghai. One of the things we've done is we have like a weekly team all hands for the tech team, which is just a half hour sort of team meeting where we go through some company news and team updates and a few things like that. And we very quickly moved that to everybody joining into a Zoom call from their desks, because when you've got some people in a room and some people kind of joining via the computer, it puts people who are joining via the computer at a massive disadvantage. So that is something that we've done. And actually, in some ways, it's easy to transition to remote because a bunch of our kind of ceremonies, if you will, are kind of already built around that whole remote idea. I think time zones is when it gets kind of tricky, and I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier, where if you put these systems in place, which you have your defined points where people need to be talking to each other and collaborating kind of in real time, and you use those to generate pretty clear ideas of what needs to be done and can then be done asynchronously, then you can deal with time zones and all that sort of stuff. Because there's not too many places in the world where you can't get, you know, kind of an hour's overlap with a little bit of flexibility from one side or the other. So I think it is about transforming your working style to make the most out of kind of short bursts of that real-time collaboration, and then generate sort of lists of stuff to do that can be done quite sort of independently and asynchronously after that. And I think also, just one other thing to add, I think is you need clear, really clear, you know, I guess it comes back to this whole kind of KPIs or OKRs discussion, and you need to have really clear, whatever you're going to call them, whatever your system is, having really clear expectations for what people need to do and what the timeframes are that they need to do those in, and what the communication needs to look like if they feel they're going to struggle to hit that and that sort of thing. I think if expectations are very clear for people, then they know what to do and they get on and do it.
Yeah, it's really useful. And since you're talking with Olga, I don't think not everybody will realise, but Crimson started New Zealand's first online high school. When did you started that fairly recently?
Well, classes start at the start of term 2, which is now 2 weeks earlier than originally planned. So that's kind of exciting. So yes, classes I think start in about 2 weeks' time. And
So what are the lessons from running like a global online high school?
right, I would say one of those lessons is environment. So we've found this, I guess, just in training our teachers at this point, and from talking to a couple of other players in the online school market as well, and through, I guess, our online tutoring that we do. Environment is really important. So we really don't want our students going to take the classes from a cafe with a noisy background environment and that sort of stuff. We really, we've sort of baked it into the school policy that they kind of need to have a defined environment that they're going to work from, and it needs to be quiet and a productive environment. So I think that's one that's really important. Video and audio, always use, at least use headphones. If your microphone in your laptop is decent, still use headphones, because the whole like echo and all of that can be really disruptive on a video call. And just getting, the earbuds that came with your phone or whatever and putting them in, cuts out any chance of feedback. If you can get a headset with a microphone, I think a lot of phones come with them these days, and most computers will accept them. That's a step up. Then if you can do what Daniela and I are doing and get a proper video conferencing headset, that's like your best bet. But really, step one, headphones, and whatever improvement you can afford after that will give you benefit for sure. Video is probably less of an issue in terms of the quality of the picture. People are much more sensitive to the quality of audio than the quality of video, as long as the video is not like super jerky where it's sort of on there and then that's okay. I think those are the main ones. And then, whatever your video conferencing tool is, learning to really use it to its fullest extent. We use Zoom, and I'm still constantly discovering new features in there. Stuff that lets your audience give feedback to you and all those sorts of things. So I think, those are a few lessons that we've picked up.
Yeah, and by using Zoom as well, you use it for like thousands and tens of thousands of calls a year, I assume.
We do. This month alone, we've done about 750,000 minutes. They calculated based on like minutes times people involved. But yeah, we would do several hundred Zoom calls a day for sure. So yeah,
you need a platform that can support it. Zoom's a good choice.
Yes, yeah, we chose them primarily because they have definitely the most robust call quality.
Lovely. So question, and probably one for Meg here. Nervous about using Quip. Knowing it's free now is a risk for later when it'll be paid. Can we have any ideas about usual costs?
I don't know if Meg's not there, I can help.
Yeah, please.
So given we deal with nonprofits, it's probably best to come to either Meg or myself and just have a conversation. We're more than happy to talk through what that would look like. So we're clear and transparent going forward of what the cost could be if you decided to take up the free period.
Yeah. Let's be clear, I know that Meg and Trudy and a lot of the other account executives at Salesforce they're okay if you use it for free and don't use it later. That is a serious option. If that's going to work for you, that's okay. You're not going to get locked into anything, but be mindful if you want to keep it. Okay, for you, Sean, do you see or Meg, do you see the virtual connection engagement opportunities working best for teams within Teams or as a whole office?
Sorry, of course, temporarily got kicked off there. I would say we've seen it best on our team, I think, working probably for groups of maybe 10 to 15 people. And I think it also depends on the activity that you're doing. So, Salesforce will host a meditation session for, 20,000 of us. So that's perfectly fine. But when you're really looking to build those interpersonal team relationships, I think keeping those small and intimate is important. So I guess kind of framing that around what the actual activity is and then choosing the appropriate audience size. We have hosted a few New Zealand-wide happy hours, which have been, I would say, about 40 people, and discussion is a bit difficult. Zoom allows you to do the gallery view of everyone. So they've been fun, but definitely for intimate discussion or where people are really trying to play a role in facilitating the conversation, I would recommend, group sizes of maybe 10 to 15. But if it is, an activity that's led by one individual, you can make those as large and as scaled as you like for those types of activities as well. Sean, I don't know
That's
if you
really useful.
there.
Yeah, one way of thinking. Oh, go on, Sean.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just following on from what Trudy was saying. So definitely when we've got full company get together, so you're giving them what's going on in the business, and it might be just the managing director, CEO, or whoever leading that, then we found that works really well in terms of getting the whole office. But going on with what Trudy said, if it's an activity where you need to have just one group together that are working on a project, you can have that sort of 10-ish sort of seems to work for what we do. But I also find that it's really good. You can have a lot of people when you're doing the education sections. So much like this, you can have quite a few people on, as long as they've got the opportunity to actually ask the questions and give feedback, those kind of things.
Yeah, and I liked one tip that I was reading yesterday too, is designating someone in the meeting. If you are looking to have, again, that group contribution, having somebody that is kind of the virtual conversation facilitator that's going on to see who is online, who could get more involved, asking questions directly to people to make sure everyone's engaged.
Lovely, really useful. And that ties on to the next one, one for you, Guy. How do you cope with online meeting silence when everybody's sitting there on mute? And you crack a great joke.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, silence is okay. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So I think that's the first thing, is to not let it put you off. I think, depending on the context, if you're asking a question and you say, are there any questions, or what questions do you have, and nobody has anything, then, you can just kind of go, okay, I'll take it as I'll take that as a no and move on. I think there's nothing wrong with that. One thing that I've done is I've sort of changed up the format of some of the meetings that I run to break them up a little bit and not have me do all the talking. Just so that it, I guess, just to avoid any kind of boredom or whatever that might creep in. So, just making sure that we sort of pass the torch a little bit in terms of who's speaking and tends to keep each other a bit awake. The other side is sometimes the whole unmute to say something and then remute thing can be a bit slow. So again, this is a Zoom feature that we use, but it's got this reactions button, which if I do this now, you'll probably see a little thing come up against my little tile there. So I get the team to use those instead, because that's relatively quick to do, to give a reaction. Or we kind of have the text chat rolling the whole time, and so you'll see a bit of chatter happening there. So yeah, there are some tools you can use to make it just a little bit easier for people to respond without having to unmute and talk. But then, I guess to summarize, silence is okay, and you can move on, and then sort of just break it up a little bit and get more people involved. And probably in the long run, that's a healthy thing anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. That's really useful. And then another question there around security and privacy online. So what I read in here is people are using instant messaging, text, WhatsApp. Is there anything they should be worried about with security and privacy?
There's a couple of angles here. So one interesting one that I heard about recently, one of my colleagues was attending a live lecture at Stanford yesterday or the day before, and somebody maliciously joined the Zoom call and started basically taking over the video. They pumped some very loud audio through to force their video to be the prominent one, and the host couldn't get it under control, and so they had to kill the call and start again. So one thing is, most of these tools, Zoom has it, I'm pretty sure G Suite has something similar. Don't make the meeting completely public. Make it have a password or something like that to join, particularly with Zoom, because the meeting IDs are this kind of 9-digit number. And with the number of people that are out there having Zoom calls at the moment, you can probably take a random guess of a 9-digit number and have reasonably good odds that you'll get into a call going on somewhere. So locking things down a little bit with the password, or, having to sign up and give a name, or request people going into waiting room before they're admitted into the main call. Those sorts of things are a good idea to stop yourself from being disrupted. Then I guess the only other thing I would say about using things like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or those other tools is you probably don't get the same like privacy guarantees out of them as you might from Slack as a business customer. So you won't have the same sort of SLAs. You may not also have the same kind of access to that data in the event that some kind of legal claim or something like that comes up. So I think in general, it's generally good practice from a security perspective and from a like risk management perspective to not let like that sort of business and private stuff intermingle too much. I mean, I think in general, like WhatsApp is pretty secure. So the odds of it getting hacked are probably not much more than your odds of Slack getting hacked. I mean, maybe WhatsApp has more focus because it's got a lot more users. So, you know, from that perspective, maybe there's more people trying. But I think it's probably more a kind of risk management aspect that it's better to keep these communications on a tool that's kind of under the control of your organization, because then you have more control about where those conversations end up past that point.
And I'd add to that as well, at least from my personal view, is keeping my social and my work life separate. I do socialize with my workmates and they're great, but I nearly sometimes will Slack them about work things and text them about non-work things to just keep things in line, so I can just turn off Slack at different times of the day. Let's scroll down here. There's a few more that just come in. So is there any HR requirements, like probably more policy requirements or legal requirements we should be considering during lockdown, Sian?
Yeah, no, certainly. And these are things that sort of come up for business owners and leaders constantly. So making sure that first up, if you've got team working at home, that you're really across things like remote working policies or working from home policies. You want to make sure you've got those in place, that you're taking into account things like health and safety. Again, we've covered off on everything around how do you keep your team engaged, making sure that you're setting up those cadences in terms of the meetings, all of those things, and having that regular contact. In terms of HR as well, I'd be looking at for engagement, collaboration, making sure that you're bringing people together. Autonomy, you still want to make sure that you're making sure your team can do what they need to do and you're coaching them and building them and supporting them, giving them regular feedback so everybody knows how they're progressing, so they know how they're doing. And again, connection. What I'm finding a lot of business owners are really wanting to know right now is around COVID-19 and wage subsidies and what that means for them. So that's a big one, making sure that you're educated in that side. So do you know whether you're eligible for the 585.80 for each team member, all of those things. How do you access it? What do you need to think about in terms of, is it going to get to a stage where you need to look at reducing hours for people in your team? When does it get to a stage that you might need to think about restructures within your business as well? And then all of this obviously ties around, what are you trying to do as a business? So how does that tie in with the strategy that you need to look at now and how you're positioned out there in the market? How does that tie in with your sales, your marketing? So all of these things connect. So it's easier almost to focus on what is the big picture and then work down to the HR side as well.
That's really useful. And just to do an unashamed plug, we use Pod, which is Sian's company, to do our HR management. So they write a lot of our policies and there to give HR advice for when we need it. So if you don't have anybody in mind, if you just search for Pod Consulting New Zealand, you'll find them. Good team of people who will already have a bunch of pre-built policies around remote working and reducing hours, and good legal counsel is really important when you're dealing with employees. It's in there twice. Tips to manage staff with kids at home. Do you want to go for that one, Sian?
Yeah. I think we've sort of covered on this quite a bit already. Yeah. It's about showing that understanding of where people are. So just to give you an example, so we look at one of my team members. She's trying to manage, her husband's an essential worker, and so it sounds quite like, you know, what Trudy's doing, you're really trying to balance it. So she is working at the moment when her husband's out most of the day. She's working really early in the morning, getting done what she needs to get done, we know that she's available for phone calls between 10:30 and 1, but she can't do anything on the computer because she's normally out with the baby. And then she's back online in the evening. So we've been able to work it so that we can actually support her, and she knows what, and she can still achieve what she needs to do. Again, it comes back to what we've been talking about. It's making sure that everybody's across their KPIs, their OKRs, what they have to do in terms of the day. And I think that that's often it. It's just focus. While we know what we've got to achieve on the big scale around the 90-day plans or the monthly plans or the weekly, sometimes just getting through the day and trying to get done what you can is the best that you can hope for. Because as you said earlier, you can't always get through everything. I still look at my list now and I think I'm one of the most organized people that I know. But if I was to continue to get done my essential things today, I'd be here till midnight. So it's trying to, work on what you can and best manage that. And I think, Trudy, you've probably got more on that as well.
Oh no, I was just going to say, Sian, that the kids and I did the body combat class on TV this morning. That was fun. Yeah, my 60's got those push-ups down on lock. So, trying to have more fun like that, I think really helps the whole household attitude and getting through this time. But, I completely agree. Prioritize. And I'm lucky Salesforce are incredible. And my manager, first thing, how are you? How's the family?
Yeah.
Leading with empathy, which is, we're really grateful.
Yeah.
That's really good, really useful. So another one in there, Sian, is kind of what as a manager are you most worried about over this COVID-19 lockdown time?
Yeah, so it again comes down into what do I need to think about? So I'd probably say the key things that I've been talking to leaders about, it's be a courageous leader. So it's think about the traits that you need right now. So when I'm working with them, it's about saying you've got to be pragmatic. You're going to prevail, but you've got to be rational in terms of how you're working. It's about making sure you've got strong advisors and other people to bounce ideas around with you, whether that's in terms of what's going on for you as a leader manager, or what does that mean in terms of how you deliver to your strategy, because now is not the time to be mediocre. As well, for being a courageous leader, I think that a lot of the things that I would say to my clients are listen and read material that's balanced. So don't sort of get yourself paralyzed by media woohoo right now. Make sure that you're sort of thinking with that growth, that positive mindset, and you're looking after your physical health. So if it's doing the Les Mills sessions or whatever, and for me, it's like Trudy, was it Trudy? Was it Meg? I'm a yoga instructor as well. So knowing that I can, on the nights that I'm teaching, it's just go and do that calming activity to sort of work on. But yeah, keeping that mindset. The other thing I'd say is for leaders, they need to go out there asking for help. Don't try and do this on your own, because others are in the same position. So it's really focusing in on that as well. Consistent messaging. This is why I said putting in that cadence of meetings so that everybody knows what's going on. Even if you feel like you're saying the same thing that you said the day before, have those meetings so that the team know what's going on, and that they feel that they're involved in the process and that you're looking visible and you're saying the business is still here, we're still alive. Another thing that I'd say business owners are really sort of focusing on is what does this strategy look like in their new reality? And a couple of the things that I get them to sort of think about are doing an updated SWOT, but keeping it focused on what's specific to COVID-19. So it's like, what are your strengths now in relation to it, weaknesses, opportunities? So I really get them to think about what they could do differently, which enables them to think about their core competencies and could they redeploy what they do? Is there something else that they could do to take advantage of the situation? And how does that enable them to better leverage their customer base by having, a bit more out of the box thinking? Pricing and things like that, because so many clients are coming onto this, like, what can we do to be online? And they're having to rethink things around their pricing strategies as well. And even some of them are reassessing right now, what does this mean in terms of their ideal clients? Cash flow, obviously, whether it's HR or anything, everybody's thinking about this in terms of what does that mean in terms of your staffing situation. But one of the things I say to clients is just do a few scenarios. What does it mean if you are the bad case scenario where you're dropping your revenue to 25% of projections? What does it mean if it's a good scenario, so 75%, or what does it mean if the likely is 50%? So it's getting people thinking about that, so then they can actually sort of really think about, what does that mean for my staff, reduction of hours or possible redundancies down the line, but also really can give you that confidence where actually we can get through this if we have the right subsidy. If we get the subsidy and we do ask people to take a bit more leave or leave without pay, we'll get through this. So yeah, the other thing I'd probably say is, no, I wouldn't actually. Those are probably the main things. But in terms of, I've covered off health and safety, so I'd probably say that. Whatever I would also say is really making sure that your your good faith obligations are there, and that you are being as compassionate and as empathetic as you can be with your teams, because people really feel it right now, more so I feel, involved in some of the consultancies that I've been, redundancy consultations that I've been involved with. So yeah, really trying to support your teams as much as possible with that empathy and understanding of what they're going through.
That's really useful.
Probably the main things, Daniel.
Thanks, Sian. Just one last question. I'll give that to you, Guy. How do we balance productivity? So we want to drive results, make sure we're still delivering for to make sure our shops are still in order. And how do you balance that with empathy and understanding of flexible parenting arrangements, for example?
Sure. I think this is kind of an interesting one, actually. I think it's relatively clear in a lot of the research that's been done around, employee engagement and all those sorts of things, that ultimately productivity is kind of an emergent property of having people who are healthy, both physically and mentally, who are what's the word? They have psychological safety. They're engaged with what the company's doing. They know what they need to do, and there aren't things that get in the way of them. So maybe, there aren't bad company processes that trip them up and those sorts of things. So I would say that you pretty much cannot improve productivity by beating the productivity drum day in, day out. If you take care of the rest of those sort of foundational things, so psychological safety, health and well-being, all those things I just mentioned. If you take care of those, productivity will come out of it. I think pretty much anybody who is able to work from home right now is very grateful to be able to do that and not to have to be pretty much straight up, furloughed or whatever. So I don't think people are gonna. Most people, I don't think most people will muck around, and I think you just have to make sure that their mind isn't, away with some kind of concern around, my kids need an education, or, they're not suffering crippling anxiety over the whole situation or whatever. So I would say index heavily on the understanding and empathy, index heavily on meaningful action to resolve the things that you can, and productivity will follow suit. That's certainly been my experience.
Thank you, that's really useful. Cool, so thanks for the answers there, guys. We do have I think there's a little poll that will come up now. So you'll see if you're logged in that your phone or your computer's automatically mixed a poll. So there's only 3 questions. So go ahead and answer them. It's all live and we can see what comes up with. How often do you check in with each staff member? And I would say having your daily stand-ups counts as a daily check-in, There's different types of check-ins as well. We're answering that, I would say that we as a team, we do daily stand-ups and then we do 1 weekly check-in with each staff member, diaries permitting, to check in at a more personal level. It looks like that's the going trend, is that you're checking with each staff member 2+ times a week. That seems pretty healthy. Any comments on that, HR expert, Sian?
Sorry, I'm breaking all Guy's rules. No headphones and keep clicking on the button. I would say, I'd probably say that we're in touch with our teams every day. Somebody is in touch with every member of the team. Somehow, yeah. 2 times a week is fine, but at the moment I'd say if your teams are not familiar with it, I would recommend being in touch a little bit more at this stage, at least in the early days.
Yeah, in line with what Guy was saying, we've all got crazy to-do lists, but if you check in, be empathetic, that's going to lead to them being productive.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'd say for my team, like I personally probably don't check in with everyone every day. I check in with my direct reports every day, but definitely everyone on my team has a check-in with somebody every day for sure.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Guy. I mean, I'm not in touch with my entire team, but their managers, their leaders, and so it goes down. Everybody's contacted, though I might just speak to my 4 direct reports.
Yeah.
oh, I think there's another. I don't know if there's more questions on this. But that roughly wraps us up with what's on here. If you do have any questions, quickly add them on now. If not, I just want to say a big thank you to Guy, Sian, Meg, and Trudy for your time and just at least willingness to try and help out other organisations for this time and showing your wisdom. And then Dave's looking to organise an online game where you can just put buttons on